how many of you have, maybe uploaded an app before? Have you ever gone to an app store to upload your own sort of program or anything? How many people have downloaded an app before? Right? Okay. So we want to reverse that. We want to see more hands going up in terms of people that are uploading content. And so this conversation is really about what is entrepreneurship. Do you guys know? Does anybody in the audience know what entrepreneurship is? How would you define it? Anybody? Starting your own business. That's great. I want you guys to sort of talk a little bit about that. And Oscar, you're helping train entrepreneurs. Sheila, you are an entrepreneur. You're a former entrepreneur now at a very successful, sort of company. Talk about what is an entrepreneur. How would you define it? And talk about what was the impetus for you to, go and build your own company.
So, like I said, I grew up in South Central LA, and as you know, our communities need all of our help, growing, developing. And growing up there, there were a lot of people in the community that didn't have opportunities and didn't have jobs. And I felt like as an entrepreneur, I can help create jobs. And that's what we do. So my company, in building a business and generating revenue, generating money, I'm able to hire people that look like the people in this room who might not necessarily get opportunities at a digital media or an advertising technology firm. So my firm, unlike all the rest of the firms in my industry, looks like you all. And the thing is that I try and do is make sure that people can come to our organization and get trained and learn about the industry, and then spread their wings and go on to other startups or go on to launching their own businesses. And that's what gets me excited.
That's great.
Entrepreneurship, what that means to me, I think it's, when you're nervous, you get that butterfly feeling in your stomach, and before you're going to speak on stage or you're about to ask someone out on a date or something like that. When you feel that way about a problem that you experience every day, and then you just decide that you want to do something about it, that's entrepreneurship. And so it can come in the form of you starting a company. It could come in the form of you doing something within your company. It could come in the form of you doing something within your school, something that changes the culture of how your school operates. That's entrepreneurship. So I think it is, starting companies is one way that we tend to look at it, but it's really about really taking ownership of a problem that you're really passionate about and seeing it through to the end, through no matter what anyone else thinks about it.
So entrepreneur, what it means to me is someone who knows how to hustle a lot. So somebody's out there hustling all the time, right? So that's why I love speaking to a group like you, because a lot of us who grew up in South Central LA, we know how to hustle. We're the best hustlers that you can find anywhere in the world, right? So we know how to hustle. So let me ask you this. How many of you, and don't worry about your teachers being in the crowd, but how many of you are selling candies at schools right now? Huh? Come on, be real. How many of you are selling candies at school? All right, there goes your entrepreneur right there with the hands up there. Don't be afraid of that, right? We talked about taking risk, and we talk about that feeling. You feel a little nervous about it, right? You're hustling all the time. And that's what an entrepreneur is. You're starting your own company. When you get to be our age, you're going to be able to say, look back and say, my first company was selling candies. Right? You bought them for 25 cents and you sold them for $1. That's an entrepreneur. It can't get easier than that. And I say that because my first company was selling pencils at school in the 6th grade. So if you're already selling something, you're already on your way to becoming an entrepreneur.
How many of you in the audience have come up with an idea for anything? How many of you have tried to act on that idea? Okay, that's great. Sheila, can you talk about, sort of the first idea that you came up with, and what were the steps that when you, sort of decided you wanted to do something entrepreneurial? What was that first sort of thing, and how did that idea, and then how did you act on it? What was the process?
Sure. So I used to work at a large magazine company. It was called Time Inc. And most of you guys probably don't read magazines, which is why I'm not at that company anymore, because they were no longer growing. But they had magazines like In Style and Sports Illustrated and People magazine. And I was working on a lot of the digital platforms for those magazines. And then I was also doing a lot of work for them in multicultural. So I launched Sports Illustrated Latino. I worked on People en Español. I launched a fashion magazine for women of color. But it was like digital over here, multicultural over here, and they were never intersecting. And so I'm like, hey, people of color are on the web. Where's the representation? And that is why I launched the company that I did. My company specifically focuses on helping brands reach people of color on the web. We're out there, we're a vibrant community, and we're growing to become the majority in this country. So understanding how to reach us is really, really important. So first of all, was having an idea and having some experience in that idea. So I knew how this business operated, I knew who the customers were, and I kind of understood the basic elements of it. The next part of the idea, like actually being able to spend some time on it, you have to carve out that space to really focus on it. And you can do that two ways. If you're starting a company, everybody's not ready to just quit their job and start a company. You can start it as your side hustle. So start writing down like what your plan is going to be, what your business plan is going to look like. Start thinking about what partners you might need or who can help you. So there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are still in school, that are still working, and you can put the basics of your business in place to get ready to go out on your own before you make that jump. But the key thing is really having that passion, so what those butterflies in your stomach, and then starting to lay out, well, what is my plan going to look like? Who are my customers? Who do I need to have on my team with me that knows things that I don't need? So I know about publishing. I need somebody that knows about technology. I need somebody that knows about sales. And just thinking about all those pieces and how they're going to work together. And you guys don't have to clap after every answer because we'll never get through everything we want to talk to you about. So just like let everybody just build on the conversation.
So, I mean, you said a really good point. It sounded like what you just said is that you have to identify a problem. And you identified a problem and then you had a solution for it.
Right.
And that was the basis for your idea to take life and form. That's a really important piece for you guys to sort of make note of. Like, she identified a problem and she thought about how she could solve it. Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I had been hustling since I was a kid, just like you were. I can't talk about all the stuff I did, but I hustled. And my first real company, I would say, was, so I'd gone from high school to college. I did accounting, and then it really irked me that a lot of friends who I went to high school with had not succeeded the same way. And I was trying to figure out what was different between me and them. What was that gap? And what I found was that I had a couple teachers that really cared about me and really pushed me to go to college. And without them, I probably would have never done it. And I was curious why everyone else didn't have those same teachers. So I started looking at the school system, and I started learning that, you know, like does anybody watch basketball here? Right? All right, so when you want someone to play basketball for your team, you watch them play ball first, right? Like, I won't know if Steph Curry can hit three-pointers until I watch him try to hit three-pointers, then I let him join the team. But what I found was that at a lot of schools, we weren't actually watching teachers teach before we hired them. And so in a lot of places, the best teachers weren't getting in the classroom. I was really annoyed by that. And so I decided to start a company to help solve that problem, where, like, to make sure that every school saw a teacher teach before they came into the class. And the first thing I did was, I didn't know anything about education. I wasn't a teacher, so I found a teacher, and I found an engineer to help me out and help me build it. And I knew that that was a problem. I didn't know that my solution was the right solution for it, and I had to be open, I had to pivot, all those words that we hear. But it was just knowing that I wanted, from like my siblings and my kids, to have a better experience than I did. I wanted every kid to be one of those lucky kids.
That's right. That's a good point. And one thing that you said that sort of triggered for me is that, look, take note. You don't have to know how to code to build a tech company. Don't think that you need to go learn some software language. That's an amazing thing that you should do, given how technology is rapidly changing, but don't feel that like because you don't know JavaScript, you can't build a tech company. Now, you may not get venture capital funding, or you may not raise the money that you need, or you may, it doesn't mean that you won't, but just don't let that be a barrier to you, because both of these entrepreneurs have tech companies or have started tech companies, but don't necessarily, would you describe yourself as a tech founder, in terms of your company?
No, and no. So I don't know how to code. I understand how to help an engineer build a product, but I don't know how to code myself. So being familiar with the process is critically important.
And I'm not discounting what you do, because what you do is really important, and you are teaching students how to code so that they can have the fundamentals and the skill sets to really build technology companies. And that's an added bonus if you can develop a product that can scale and then also go out and sell it, because a venture capitalist, a person who's going to give you money, is going to look at that person and say, hey, this is a tech person, and they can build product. And that's how Mark Zuckerberg built Facebook. He was an engineer, and he taught himself how to code, and that made him an interesting sort of entrepreneur, because he was this hacker, this person that could take software and build all kinds of crazy things. So do you want to add anything? What would you sort of say to?
I would say that you can't build a company by yourself, right? It's just impossible to build a company by yourself. So you can try, and you probably fail, which is not a bad thing, right? If you fail, you try another one again, and you'll get better at it. But you can't start a company by yourself. So with us, what we tell youngsters like you is that we usually put you in groups of 4, right? A startup of 4 people, and one of those 4 people is what we call a project manager, right? Someone who manages the project, that understands how long is it going to take to build something, right? It's someone who's kind of like the boss, right? Telling everybody when to do certain things, right? And the other person that we have in a team is somebody who has a product manager. So this is a person who understands, they understand the product itself, the users itself, they understand what the users want, what your customers want, and gives feedback to the rest of the team. The other person that's really important, and I always say that this next person is the coder or the developer, the engineer, someone who knows how to program something very well. They usually think that they're God's gifts to the world, but they don't understand that they need the project manager, the business person, to actually help you put that product into there, right? So then you have another person called the user and the UX designer. The UX designer, someone who designs, someone who understands how the layout is gonna be looking like, the colors of it. So you have a team. Always remember that. You have a team. In any company, whether you're selling candies, whether you're doing tech, whether you're doing marketing, you gotta have a team. So think about who your team is. Think about around you, who's good at talking to people, right? You might be very shy, but you know how to write very well, or you might know how to do math very well. And maybe you don't like to talk to people, so go find that one person that's good at talking to people, so that person goes sell your product and go tell everybody about your product. And that's how you build a company. It takes a team. You can't do it by yourself.
That's right. It's not about the work that needs to get done. It's about the people you're working with to get the work done. And that's something that I live and breathe every day. How can you work with people to do work? And you're going to be dealing with that for the rest of your life, whether it's in your own company or outside of your company. And that's a skill that if you develop and master well, you will always have an opportunity, regardless of how dominant technology becomes in our lives. If you know how to work with people to get things done, you will be okay. So what would you tell these students here about where the wind is blowing? What's hot right now from a tech innovation perspective in terms of from an tech and entrepreneur perspective? So in other words, if you're an entrepreneur starting out today, where would you be focused in terms of platforms or,